Ever since I started college last year in the fall, I've been a part-time barista to help with my monthly payments. Put gas in my car, food on the table, etc. I take about 5 classes a week, and they usually end around 4:30, so my shifts at the cafe are always closing ones. 5 to 10 p.m., 11 on Fridays, Mondays, Tuesdays, Fridays, and every other weekend. It was a routine that I got used to and had always dreaded. If you've ever worked a job for money and not for happiness, you know the feeling. That looming sense of tension in the hours leading up to your shift, and the satisfaction of getting to your car the night before a day off. That's what I was itching for this night. It was a Friday late in October before a weekend I wasn't scheduled, and I was so ready for that break. When I walked in that night, the bell that hung on the glass entrance door rang loudly in my ear, an awful sound that meant a customer had arrived. Any bell still irked me to this day. I looked around for customers before I clocked in. It was a big bookstore, cafe, but I could usually get the look around before getting behind the counter. I wove my way through the bookcases with my arms around my back, tying my black apron over my stained black shirt for work, and my ever more dirty black leggings. You gotta love the barista fashion. By the time I fumbled with my name tag, attempting to pin it to my right boob, the name Kate taped on it. I was in the humor section. Humor was a small shelf, usually just guides on how to be funny or biographies on people who thought they were, and then it melted into the everlasting fiction section. That's when I saw the first human in the last 5 minutes. The man was tall, balding, with a thin tuft of white fuzz on the back of his head. His shirt was a faded red, and his jeans were surely from the 90s. His long, slender neck was in a curve and bent down into the novel he held. The way he slid his bony finger over each page as he flipped through them was eerie. I must have stared for longer than I thought because when my watch buzzed to remind me it was 5 o'clock, I swore under my breath and continued my trudge to the counter. I slowed my pace when I got closer to the man. He was backing up towards the shelf behind him. "Excuse me," I said to him, trying to wedge through. But wherever I went, he got in the way, his head still in the book and turning pages. It was already 5:02. I was officially late. So, with a frustrated sigh, I went around to the next aisle, walked through into the counter. There was a slight release of tension that now sat on my chest when I saw the only coworker I enjoyed closing with standing behind the counter. Marina was scrolling through her phone. It must have been a slow night, and her purple hair was knotted in a bun. "Hey," I announced to get her attention, then immediately turned to one of the registers to punch in. I looked past it for a moment to see if that customer was still there, but I didn't see him. Good. Leave. I heard Marina drop her phone on the back counter and close in towards me. "I'm so sorry," she said. My head turned to her with a confused look. "Why, what happened? Steven on a tirade again?" Steven was our horrid 50-something manager. "No, I'm heading out." I dropped my arms from the machine that just dinged its approval of the clock in. "Why? Who else is coming in?" I said, the upset thick in my voice. "No one, Kate. You're closing alone. Steven couldn't find anyone else." "I can't close by myself. I won't be out of here until 12. Marina, you have to stay." As I pleaded with her, she slowly undid her apron and pulled it over her head. "I'm sorry, I can't." And with that, she grabbed her phone and walked around the counter towards the door. I was heart-wrenched as I watched her, betrayed and annoyed. My eyes slowly shifted to the aisles of books on my left when I saw that same old man peering over the novel clenched so close to his face. When our eyes locked for a brief moment, his head dropped back unseen, past the pages. My heart was in my throat and I had half the mind to leave. A few hours into my shift later, there was a rush at around 6:45 that lasted until 8:30, and I was exhausted. Handling both registering for the cafe and bookstore and making drinks on a Friday night was practically torture, but I had long forgotten the weird man with the book. It was 9 o'clock now, and since only a few people paraded the aisles, I decided to start my closing duties a little early. I surveyed the clipboard to see what I could get away with now and decided on trash. The one under the espresso machine was already brimming and threatening overspill, so I pulled up the double-bagged trash, tied it, and dragged it along with me to the back room. There was a little circle window on the swinging door, so don't worry, I could see upcoming customers. The back room already smelled like garbage and stale coffee. It had big steel shelves full of book overstock and random stuffed animals in bags on the floor. I shuffled my way to the very back towards the trash bins when I felt a weird tingling sensation make its way up my spine. I looked over my shoulder at the rows of carts with stacks of books when the light above flickered. Not unusual, it was an old place, but I couldn't help the anxiety that crept up my neck. I turned my head again, and that's when I saw it. A face peered around one of the carts and shot back when it caught me looking. A scream escaped my lips, and I dropped the bag of trash, but my feet were glued to the floor. "You can't be back here," I yelled without thinking. It must have been a kid. They moved so quickly I couldn't tell. But I wasn't hanging around to find out. I left the bag where it was and ran through the swinging door. 2 women stood at the register with concerned looks on their faces. I felt a little embarrassed, my face a beet red and my heart pounding in my chest. Walking towards the ladies, I held up a "I'll be right with you in just a second" finger and smiled at them before grabbing my phone from the back counter and ringing Stephen. Pick up," I whispered to the dial tone, my fingernail wedged between my teeth. My pulse still hadn't subsided and my vision was blurry. "Hello?" "Stephen, hi, it's Kate." There was a moment of silence on the other line. I pulled back my phone to see if the call had disconnected, but it hadn't. "Hello?" I said. "Yes, Kate. What is it?" He sounded upset, as he always did, and I searched for what I would say. I'm not sure why I called him and not the cops, but I thought that felt too official. I saw someone in the back room, and I'm here alone. I didn't know what to do. I heard him sigh, and that only made the paranoia worse. "A customer?" "Yeah, I think so. I didn't get a good look." "You're sure you saw a person?" I was starting to feel frustration buzzing in my head. "Yes, I'm sure. I think so." I paused, looked back at the now growing line of customers, and threw them a smile. "I'm not sure." Another sigh. "Okay, Kate, I'll keep an eye on the cameras from home, but I'm sure you'll just be fine. Have a nice..." "There's really no one that can come help?" "Nope. No one, Kate. You can't..." This time, the sigh was so loud, I thought I could feel it through the phone. "No, I can't. I'll watch the cameras. Have a nice night." The beeping from being hung up on followed that, and I felt a squeeze of panic in my chest. I was alone in this. After avoiding the back for the rest of the night and shuffling through the rest of the customers, the time had come. 10:58 and not a single customer was in sight. My checklist was nearly complete, the machines were off and cleaned, the counters wiped down, and the pastries either wrapped or on the counter waiting to be put in the fridge, which was in the back room. I closed out the register, counted the money, and stuffed it into a yellow envelope to be locked into the office safe, again in the back, then grabbed the keys from beneath the cash tray. I started to walk around the counter and towards the door when a bell stopped me in my tracks. "We're closed," I yelled out, trying to look around the bookshelves for any sign of life. When I got no response, that familiar panic heartbeat started up again. "Hello?" I said again, not as loud this time. There was fear evident in my voice. "I have to lock the door." My voice was so weak and pathetic that if I was being robbed, I practically deserved it. I walked closer to the door with slow, reluctant steps. The keys that hung from my fingers jingled. while I walked, but I was sure my heart was louder. Light from the street lamp outside radiated through the glass entrance door, and I looked around for anyone. Maybe the wind pushed the door open and set the bell off. That must be it. I sped and walked closer to the door, but stopped once more when my phone buzzed in my apron pocket. It was a text from Steven. "Get out," it said. My blood ran cold. My legs felt like jelly and I couldn't move. My head whipped around. Most of the bookstore was dark after I turned the main lights off. Shelves were swallowed in the black, and I stared hard into it but saw nothing. Another buzz in my hand this time. "On the cameras. Get out now." This time, when I looked up into the darkness, the same man from earlier stood next to one of the aisles. There was no novel in his hand this time, and he looked straight at me. His eyes were wide, arms stretched out long to his sides, and a wide smile plastered on his face. My heart dropped to my stomach, and the second I started to move towards the door, so did he. The man began to full-on sprint towards me with a smile still on his face. I screamed and ran to the door to pull it open. He grabbed my arm, his head looming towards mine. The skin of his face cracked and wrinkled. That smile so wide with teeth yellow and rotting. I ripped my arm from him, yelling out all the while for him to get off me, and I managed to slip through the glass door. I knew he'd just come after me. The sky was so dark and there was no one around. I dropped my phone on the concrete sidewalk and forced the door closed. He pulled on it from inside the store, but with shaking fingers, I pushed the key into the lock and turned it. Once I heard that satisfying click, I grabbed my phone and backed away. He stared at me through the glass door, that smile only growing wider. His stiff right arm began to move slowly, and I couldn't help but watch what he was doing. It was my chance to run, to drive home, but I was stuck. His hand slipped into his jean pocket and pulled out the last thing I was expecting. A silver, sparkly keychain full of gummy bear charms. The keys to my car and my house. So I work at my local car dealership, where I mainly wash cars and do deliveries for people who buy new cars. On this particular delivery, it was late, around 6-7 p.m., and probably the last car of the day for me. As most of my coworkers were clocking out, I had maybe 4 other people with me who worked the night shift. As I was finishing up washing this car, I noticed that I needed to go get this car gassed up at the gas station right down the road. It was getting dark out, and I work in a not-so-great area, so I wanted someone to come with me to fill it up. But sadly, everyone was either leaving or working on their own deliveries, so I, jokingly, pulled up my bootstraps and drove across the street to the gas station. Now, if I hadn't already said, this is my first job, and one of my first deliveries at night, ironically. Being me, I took a small blade with me that you would typically use to get stickers and glue off of windows. When I approached the gas station, it was really dark, with only a few lights lighting every other gas pump, and of course I took the lit lane. This is where things take a dark turn. As I was walking out after paying for the pump, I saw a middle-aged homeless man start to look at me in the car I just exited. Now, I didn't think anything of it, so I went on my way to fill up the car as normal. When I got back and started filling the car, I saw that the man was now approaching the car I was filling. He then walked right next to me and asked, "Hey kid, mind if I get a ride?" I then replied, "No, sorry sir, we're not allowed to give people rides." He then asked me again, totally ignoring what I had just told him. "Can I get a ride in your car? I need to go somewhere where you can meet my other friends." That made my heart drop. No, sir. Again, sorry, but I can't do that." And as this was all happening, I was firmly holding that little knife in my pocket. The man then proceeded to take a knife out of his jacket. "So, are you going to take me or what?" he said with a low voice. That's when I knew what I had to do. Being me, I didn't try to fight him, as his knife was considerably bigger than mine by 80%. So I said, "Yeah, sure, I'll take you. Just let me fill her up all the way." He didn't ease up, still holding the knife firm. I then casually walked into the car and rolled the window down, saying, "Okay, get in." As he was just about to open the door, I slammed on the gas and floored it away. Now, the story doesn't end here. He then somehow managed to find out where I work, and then my manager had to call the police. They arrived, and the man was arrested. But who knows what this sick bastard would have done if he made me let him in. I later quit the night shift and started working day hours only. Haven't had anything happen since. This is the scariest thing to happen to me at work. Time was around 10 p.m. when this happened. It was dead in the store, and the front-end manager was giving cashiers tasks to do, so we weren't just standing around. My task was to sweep the vestibule. I'm sweeping the vestibule when a lady enters the store and approaches me. She tells me, "I need you to go outside and check on the children." I look at her and she refuses eye contact with me. She tells me there are children in the back of the car and I need to go check on them. I glance outside and see a dark-colored car parked out front with headlights off. The lady is making the follow me motion with her hands and telling me over and over that I need to come outside and check on the children in the back seat of the car. My gut instinct is telling me to run and that something is up. I tell her that I'll get my manager. She then gets frantic and says, "No, don't do that. No need to involve anyone. Only you need to know about the children." At this point, I'm getting scared and alarm bells are going off to run away. I run inside and find the manager. I tell him what just happened. He grabs security and they go outside. The lady in the car are nowhere to be found. They take me to the office to write a report of what happened, just in case police need to get involved. Security check the cameras. The camera shows a dark color car approaching the front of the store with lights off and just sitting there for a while. A lady exits the passenger side and enters the store. Security says it looks like the lady got out of the car when I entered the vestibule. Security thinks whoever was in the car was obviously up to no good. I'm not sure if management or security called the police. I hope they did. End of shift, I was escorted to my ride. I hate to think what would have happened to me if I did go outside to, quote, check on the children. Always, always trust your gut instinct. I brought myself pepper spray to bring to work. So, my last story didn't take place during the night shift at a job per se, but it did happen at night at Grandma's house. My grandma's house was built in the year 1848. It's in a small town in Indiana. It was built by a doctor that would give runaway slaves medical treatment. A tunnel ran under the city, and it ended at my grandma's house. The house had many owners over the years, and of course, I grew up next door to this house. One night, I was staying in the house. I was staying upstairs in one of the 3 bedrooms. This particular bedroom happened to be in between the other 2 rooms. We called it the middle bedroom. As I was laying there trying to fall asleep, I started hearing these footsteps slowly walking up the stairs. You could hear each step and guess roughly where on the stairs the person was just by the sound of the steps. As I heard the sound of the final step being placed onto the floor of the second story, there was a short pause. I could hear the steps turning left, stepping towards the first bedroom. Once I heard the steps reach that bedroom, there was a short pause. I heard the steps coming towards my room. I was fully expecting to see Grandma because I thought she was coming to check on me. As the sound of the footsteps passed by my room, I didn't see anyone. The steps just continued past my room, heading down to the last bedroom. As the steps reached the last bedroom, there was another slight pause. Then I heard the steps turn around and make their way back towards me. This time, I made sure to pay close attention because I felt a little spooked that I somehow missed my grandma. As the steps passed by my room again, it was obvious that nobody was there. This wasn't Grandma coming to check on me. This had to be a ghost. I put my head under the blanket to hide myself. The footsteps continued to walk back and forth down the hallway, always stopping and turning around to patrol the hallway like a military guard. Every couple of passes, I would peek out from under the blankets to see if I could see anyone. Nobody was to be seen. I thought about just getting up to look in the hallway, but I didn't have the courage. I decided my safest bet was to hide under the blankets and hope that whatever it is didn't notice me laying there in bed. I have never been so terrified in my life. I felt helpless, too scared to get up, too frightened to scream out for help. So I just continued to lay there hiding under my blanket. When the first light of dawn started coming through the windows, the footsteps stopped. I laid in bed, listening so hard that I could hear my heart beating. After 20 or 30 minutes of silence, I got up enough courage to jump out of bed. I ran downstairs as fast as I could, ran out the door and across the street to my house. I didn't tell anyone about what happened to me. I didn't think anyone would believe me. A few weeks later, my aunt, who grew up in that house, asked me if I ever stayed there overnight. When I told her yes, she told me about how she would hear footsteps patrolling the hallway at night when she was growing up in that house. She said the ghost is called Mr. Sellers. A few years later, my cousin and I were snooping around in a closet upstairs. We found this old 1800s style photograph. In the photograph was a man. On the back of the photograph was handwritten, Mr. Sellers. Since this house was owned by my grandmother, and it was right across the street, I spent a lot of time there. This wasn't the only paranormal thing to happen there, but it was the first paranormal experience to happen to me, and it was the inspiration for me to start my podcast, Brave the Basement. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed these scary stories from Reddit. I'd like to give a special thanks to all the Reddit users that allowed me to narrate their stories. The links to their original posts will be in the description box below. Now, if you like these creepy night shift stories, be sure to leave a like and consider subscribing, as there will be more content to come. Thank you guys. See you soon.